30 years ago, the media looked very different. Somewhere between then and now, the world witnessed a technological explosion. Through the internet, a plethora of information is now easily and instantly accessible. And not only is it available, but people are accessing that information constantly when they scroll through social media or check the most recent breaking news headline. This ease of access to news and news publishing has created something called the 24-hour news cycle. What mattered yesterday doesn't necessarily matter today. The lives of important news stories seem to be increasingly shorter, not because they matter less after a week's time, but because there is a new abundance of information to replace it. According to a dissertation by Thomas Queen of the College of William and Mary, quote, news organizations, mostly businesses dependent on profit for survival, have an economic incentive to create stories that appeal to the largest audience, end quote. In other words, media organizations are incentivized to put out content in a way that makes the most economic sense, which means focusing on the issues that will garner the most attention. This is how news companies have always operated. But today, with the presence of technology and the 24-hour news cycle, news companies will profit the most when they're the first to break an interesting story, when the headlines in the story are outrageous, and when they're putting out as much content as possible for people to consume. Technology has also developed ways to benefit companies through the use of algorithms and cookies. These are both ways that websites track the sites you visit, the ads you interact with, your search history, and/or other information to build the profile of ads and content you would be most likely to click on. This means that if you typically search for liberal news sites and engage with content that praises leftist platforms, media sites will most likely recommend more similar content for you to interact with. As a result, it is easier than ever to become trapped inside of an echo chamber where people are rarely exposed to factual content that supports opposing viewpoints. This is not a partisan issue. It is something that occurs on the left and the right sides of the political spectrum, and is merely an inevitable result of the algorithm set forth by social media companies. The culmination of these things, the unimaginable amount of content being circulated each day on the internet, and the tendency of social media to keep people within a partisan echo chamber, has created the perfect circumstances for the growing rift between opposing political parties. While civil debates are expected in any functioning democracy, the past few years have revealed an uptick in reports of political polarization in America. People are more likely to demonize their opponents rather than be willing to civilly debate them, and people are more likely to agree with their political party on all issues no matter what. The consequences of this are clear. Increased polarization means that people are less likely to denounce their own political party for poor practice such as lying, spreading propaganda, demonizing opponents, or taking quotes out of context. As a result, people are angry with each other, and most people do not have a solid grasp on who or what to believe, and it can be nearly impossible to hold political officials accountable for the things they do and say. And with the added detriments of the 24-hour news cycle, people cannot seem to keep up with the most recent scandals and political issues. By next week, there will inevitably be something new circulating the internet that requires our attention. And this is why we are losing the race against the machine when it comes to the way that technology has affected America's political landscape. We are more polarized than ever. It is increasingly difficult to hold politicians accountable for poor political practice or controversies, and a lot of people are too exhausted to keep up. But don't freak out just yet. Here are a few things we can do to take back control of the race. First, we can support media literacy campaigns. Media literacy campaigns seek to increase the average person's understanding of how to navigate the abundant information on the internet by checking multiple sources and consuming content from both sides of the political spectrum. Even if you don't agree with the perspectives, it can be important to understand why somebody believes what they do. This can help you get to the root of the argument or find a compromise or middle ground between two perspectives. Next, we can also pressure media companies to utilize independent fact-checking organizations. Instagram and Twitter, for example, have made huge strides in this capacity by placing flags on possible misinformation or political content which links to reputable sources on the issue. The goal is never to suppress anyone's voice, but to give people easier access to multiple sources of information. Lastly, you can take action. Organize campaigns within your local communities, write to your local politicians about the importance of politicians being held accountable, and vote for people you think are positive role models that will change our culture for the better. Our democracy's power is not in the hands of the government or in the hands of giant social media companies and news organizations. Our democracy's power is within the people. You have a voice and you have the power to enact change. Whether that's by changing your media consumption habits, reaching out to people on the other side of the political spectrum, or getting involved in local politics, it is imperative that you make your voice mean something. Thank you, and let's have hope for the future of America.